Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I'm here to help you finish your Christmas shopping list and let everyone else over there stiff-arm their competition while trying to fight off that tryptophan on Turkey Night. Now, what we did was we partnered with Rochester Sports Autographs, the largest JSA authenticated autograph distributor in the United States, where you can get up to 75% off over 30,000 autographed sports collectibles during this holiday season. They have something for everyone. But how is RSA able to offer such great deals on JSA authentication, you ask? Well, they do this by making deals directly with athletes so there are no extra markups, and they choose to then pass that savings on to you, the customer. Now, all orders from Rochester Sports Autographs are top quality and shipped to your door with top authentication and a money-back guarantee. But hurry up because customers are so stark raving mad for RSA that memorabilia sells out daily. All you have to do is head over to shoprsa.com/SHN. Again, that's shoprsa.com/SHN. So don't wait to bring home your favorites and own a piece of sports history for you and the loved ones on your shopping list this holiday season.
Have you ever been in a discussion wondering who the greatest college football coach of all time was? Well, you have some answers now because we have a book by Matthew DiBiase, Lords of the Gridiron I, the greatest coaches of all time in the college level. Matthew's here to discuss his book, coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pigpen, your portal to positive football history. And we are going to stare down that portal tonight and talk about some of the greatest collegiate coaches of all time. And we have an author that no stranger to the show, Matthew DiBiase. Welcome back to the Pigpen.
Darren, thank you very much for having me on. It's always an honor and a privilege to be here.
Yeah, Matthew, the privilege is all ours. And, we talked last time you visited about your Lords of the Gridiron II book, which was about the National Football League coaches. Mm-hmm. And you brought it to our attention and you shared the book with me. And it's a wonderful book, Lords of the Gridiron I, which is college football's greatest coaches. And this is just as spectacular as the National Football League because there are some really great names, and you did a very nice job on this book as well.
Thank you so much, Darren. Thank you.
Now, Matthew, what was your inspiration for writing about these great college coaches?
Well, as I said in my previous interview, as a historian, I have this motto, history abhors a vacuum. And my first two books filled a void in terms of sports literature, sports history literature, first with NHL coaches and then with NHL general managers. No one had ever rated and evaluated, those two subjects before. And looking at college football literature, there are ample biographies of the great college coaches, but no one, as far as I know, before my effort, ever really did a serious attempt at rating and ranking at least the great Division I-A coaches. In other words, using like a metrical system of analysis. In other words, is there a way to do that without submitting to sectional biases or anything like that? Can you find a certain universal core standard where you can judge who was better? Was Bear Bryant better than Nick Saban, or was it the other way around? How did Knute Rockne compare with like Barry Switzer and so on down the line? Is there a way to do that? And what Lords of the Gridiron, college football's greatest coaches, does is fill that void and make the attempt. I mean, to create a fair and unbiased system where using four standards, career value, average season rating, BQ value, which measures a coach's best 5 consecutive years, and also B5 value, a coach's best 5 seasons overall. using a composite rating system where you got all the Division 1A coaches. So to clarify for listeners, this is strictly Division 1A level. I'm not dealing with Division 2 or Division 3 coaches, strictly Division 1A. And only those Division 1A coaches who served a minimum of 10 seasons at the Division 1A level. There's only two exceptions to that rule in the book. That's Pete Carroll and Walter Camp. Pete Carroll only did 9 years at USC, and Walter Camp only did like 7 seasons when he was coaching at Yale in the 1890s. But the reason why I made those two exceptions was because, one, Walter Camp virtually, you could say he virtually invented American college football as we know it today. That's how he separated from soccer and rugby. He literally made college football truly an American sport, as it were. And everything stemmed from Walter Camp. And he won at least 2 mythical national championships. There was no college polling thing back then. Everything started in 1936 in terms of college bowl. But retroactively, he won national championships for Yale and made Yale the most dominant college football program of the 19th century. I mean, if you look at their record from virtually the beginning up to the 1890s, they were the most strongest college football program in the nation, literally. It's hard to believe now. I mean, back then, yeah, Ivy League football, Yale and Princeton were the 2 most dominant programs of the late 19th century. And for Pete Carroll, he did 9 seasons at USC, but he won 2 national championships, one in the BCS and then one on the AP poll. That's the last time you ever had a split between the college football playoff, what was then, the BCS, now the college football playoff, then the AP poll. That was in 04. No, 03. I stand corrected. But I figured that was good enough for my view, and I included them into the book. And again, but all the other coaches had a minimum of 10 seasons at the Division 1A level. And I ran them through. And the end result is Lords of the Gridiron, college football's greatest coaches there. And it worked out. I just, the question is now answered. I mean, if you wanted to, you're curious, how did Woody Hayes compare with like Bo Schembechler? How did Bud Wilkinson compare with like, Bob Devaney or whomever? Now that question is answered. I mean, who was the greatest coach who never ever won a national championship? Simple. John Vaught of Ole Miss.
Okay. Now, how many different coaches were there? I mean, we know you came down to the top 50, but what was the pool strength that had 10 years in the highest level of collegiate football?
Oh, geez, what was that final number?
You could throw a ballpark out there. Was it hundreds? Was it thousands?
Oh no, I think it was like no, not thousands. Definitely not thousands. I think it was like 300. I think it's like 300. When it came out in 2019, it was like 300 or so. Yeah, I think about 300 or so. 300 names. Okay, for those who are eligible. And every year I always update my things every year. And when I post it with my website, which is on Facebook, ladies and gentlemen, it's called the College Football History and Literature Appreciation Society on Facebook. And after the national championship game, I always put out my updated rankings and all of that. So if you ever join the Facebook group, you always know how people are going up and down the charts and all of that. Okay.
Oh, very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's a great page. I frequent it quite often and try to post some things in it myself.
Yeah, like for example, in the book, he wasn't featured in the book, but right after my book came out, the season following that, Jimbo Fisher of Texas A&M cracked the top 50 list. Whereas before, when the book came out, he wasn't on the list, but now he is. Okay, so, and he's moved up a bit. I mean, right now, not counting this season, Jimbo Fisher ranks 36th all time. Okay, so he's moved up a bit. Now, whether he can move up some more this season, I mean, I don't know. That's a question of it. But you see, it's like the stock market. Either your stock is rising, or it can fall, or it can stagnate, and all of that. Like last season, Dabo Swinney of Clemson. He did not win the ACC title, and so he kind of stagnated a bit. Whereas the seasons before, he was advancing in leaps and bounds and all of that. And amongst all active coaches, he's the second best behind Nick Saban, according to my calculations.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when you're playing in that many national championship games as he's had his teams in, that's definitely some credibility to get him up there. So I
Yeah.
didn't realize he'd been there 10 seasons already. It's time
Oh,
flies
yeah.
by really quick, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right now, by my not counting this season, Dabo Sweeney ranks 12th on the all-time list according to my calculations. Okay.
Oh, okay.
As of what happened last season, not counting what's happening now.
So he's moved up 3 spots since the book came out because he was 15th in the book. So wow,
Yes,
nice.
yes.
So it's a very dynamic list that you're carrying on too. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's really great.
Yeah.
So great job.
Thank
Now, what were some of the surprise coaches? Maybe somebody that you didn't expect to make the top 50.
Surprises. A man named Fred Folsom, who was who literally put the Colorado Buffaloes on the college football map. That was a bit of a surprise, but when he went out there in the 1890s, he actually did 3 separate stints with Colorado. In addition to being a great football coach, he was also a top-notch lawyer, and he was pursuing a legal career. In fact, one of the reasons why he went out there, he wanted to pursue his legal studies at the same time as he was coaching the football team. And when he went out there, I mean, Colorado had only been a state. I mean, it became a state in 1876. And I think he went out there, was in the early 1890s. I mean, it was still very much the Wild West out there. I mean, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were riding around Colorado, robbing places and all that. So there was still this Wild West atmosphere. He came from Dartmouth. He had been a star player at Dartmouth there, and it was pretty raw. I mean, the football team, it only played a handful of teams, and sometimes they weren't even colleges. They were like local athletic clubs. That's how crude it was out there. I mean, they weren't even in a conference. It was this very loose association. In fact, what later became the Big 8 conference wasn't really formed until they didn't really join until like the 30s or the 40s or something like that. But he literally emerged in a vacuum, and he just built this football team. And 3 separate times, he had a lot of undefeated seasons, and he put them on the map slowly but surely. He's giving them legitimacy, and all of a sudden you start getting, other schools. They're linking up with like Nebraska and the other mountain state schools out there, and the reason why Colorado, and they named the football field after him, Folsom Stadium. That's why they named it after him, because he put that football team on the map. And he later became a prestigious law professor there at the University of Colorado. But that's what surprised me there. I mean, he was born in Maine, but he made his way out west, and he made a name for himself as a college football coach there. Yeah, that was surprised me.
Yeah, that is a good, because that's not one that I would have, just going into this with some precognitive names coming up here. He probably wouldn't be one of my top 50 that I would have said, oh, this guy's got to be on that list. But many of the ones that are, I look down there, I think of a name, I look at the list, I'm like, oh, there he is. It's the thinking was right. So was there any surprises of somebody that you expected to be that top 50 that didn't make it because somebody like Folsom knocking him out?
Jimmy Johnson. I mean, I remember when the book came out, people, how come Jimmy Johnson in there? And if you read the methodology chapter in the book, I kind of explain why. The problem with Jimmy Johnson is he only coached 10 seasons. And his early years at Oklahoma State, he had like one or two losing seasons there that kind of dragged him down a bit. If he hadn't had those losing seasons, I think it would have improved his odds. But another key factor was twice he lost opportunities at winning a national championship. When he lost the '87 Fiesta Bowl to Penn State, that damaged him. Also, his loss to Notre Dame, Lou Holtz's Notre Dame in the Catholics versus Convicts game. Remember, Miami was number 1 in the nation. If they had not lost to Notre Dame, almost certainly they would have won that national championship, because they didn't lose again for the rest of the season. If they had beaten Notre Dame in that game and continued to run that table, the national championship was theirs. And if he had won those 2 national championships, then Jimmy Johnson would have ranked among the top 50 according to my calculation. So those 2 bowl game losses, those 2 losses cost him, and also those 2 losing seasons at Oklahoma State, that dragged him down and was sufficient, I think I got Jimmy Johnson ranked at 64th or 65th, according to my present day calculations there. That's a thing. That's what people surprised some people there. Another surprise. Uh, huh. Hmm.
Well, when you think about that,
Woody Hayes. Okay, Woody Hayes.
okay.
People thought Woody Hayes was going to rank higher because right now I got Woody at 19th. And in my chapter on Woody, I kind of explained it. There was like 4 factors that weighed against him. One, there was a lean period from 1958 to 1967 where Ohio State never went to the Rose Bowl. They didn't win. I think they won a Big Ten conference championship. I think it was in 60, but no Rose Bowl invitations there. And back then, the Big Ten had a stupid rule called a no repeat rule, where you could not go to the Rose Bowl 2 consecutive years in a row. Even if you may have had the best record in the Big Ten, no, you couldn't repeat and you had to defer. And I think it was 3 or 4 times Ohio State was victimized by that no repeat rule. And that would have helped Woody Hayes' ranking. He would have gone up higher, especially if he had won the Rose Bowl games and all that. Also from 58 to 67, Ohio State had some lean years. I mean, they did not dominate. It was kind of like the Valley Forge of Woody Hayes' stint at Ohio State there. That was another reason. The fact that he lost to Michigan in 1969, that Ohio State, I think if they were not top ranked, they were in contention, and they lost that first matchup between Bo Schembechler in 69. That cost them the national championship, and that harmed Woody Hayes' BQ rating because his best 5 consecutive years, I had it from 68 to 72. That damaged him there. That cost him some points. He could have ranked even higher if he had beaten Michigan in that game. Then in 1970, when Ohio State lost the Rose Bowl to Stanford, that great upset victory where Stanford, led by Jim Plunkett, beat Ohio State. Again, that was a major bowl game loss. That took points off him. It harmed his, his BQ rating, his average season rating, his B5 rating there. You see, it's a little accumulation of things. Let's see, what was the 4th factor?
Probably the 1976 UCLA loss.
That hurt him too. Again, that cost them because they had a shot at the national championship, and again they lost. It cost them. Yes. So that's the reason why Woody Hayes didn't rank in the top 10. That's why I've got him at 19 there. Yeah, just accumulation of things. Yes.
He ended up with the names that you have above him. I wasn't disappointed in seeing where he was because I think definitely the gentlemen you have above him are probably rightfully so. I would think of him probably about that spot anyway in the top 50. Now, do you mind talking about your top 5 who you have under, or do you want to keep that for readers of the book?
Well, it's been out for 3 years. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Nick Saban right now was number 1. Right now, according to my calculations, he ranks the top in best 5 consecutive years and also in his B5 value there. He was the greatest of all time in that category. I got him ranked 4th in career value. Turner was number 1. Bear Bryant's number 2. Let's see, number 3. I forget. I don't know who was number 3 there. But 3 is Bobby Bowden, the late Bobby Brown, God rest his soul. But and every season he keeps adding on to it. I think he's got a shot at pass. I don't know if he'll pass Bobby Bowden this season. I don't know. He'll probably come very, very close as long as he doesn't lose another game, as it were. And I got an average season rating. I got Nick Saban ranked 5th. But in terms of his composite rating, he's tops. He's got a wide margin, almost like 2.7 points ahead of Urban Meyer, who's ranked number 2, according to my calculations there. But Saban, he restored Alabama to greatness. He had his stints, at Michigan State, at Toledo there, and also at LSU. And Alabama in the mid 2000s, it was just bleeding, and he just turned it all around. The fact that he could eclipse Bear Bryant of all people, that was so stupendous. He came so close in 2013. If it hadn't lost that Iron Bowl game to Auburn, he was going for the trifecta, which no one has ever done in college football history at the Division I-A level, winning 3 consecutive national championships. It still hasn't been done. He came within an ace of doing it. take away that Iron Bowl loss. I mean, in 2018, he reconstituted himself and again was dominating in the college football playoff. I mean, if he had won last year, that would have been 2 straight consecutive championships. In this season, he would have been going in for the trifecta. But no, they lost to Georgia and all that. But just a stupendous coach, one of the greatest defensive coaches of all time. I mean, he did it. I mean, if my book had come out not in 2019 but in 2018, he would have been number 2. But after 2019, he became number 1 according to my calculations there.
Yes.
Now, Urban Meyer. I mean, now with Urban Meyer, he's out. And after that embarrassing episode at Jacksonville, who knows whether he'll get back into it or not. I mean, as far as he'll never get back to the pros and all that. But, it'll be interesting to see if he ever gets back into college coaching, or considering his health issues with that, with his, what's that thing? That hiatal hernia or something like that. And also that cyst, that arachnoid cyst in his head. Who knows? I mean, right now his name is kind of mud after being tarnished like that in Jacksonville. But I mean, I got him, according to my calculation, in terms of the average season rating, which measures a coach's ability of getting consistent maximum effort, he's number 1, the greatest of all time in terms of consistent excellence. There was no drop off with Urban Meyer. I mean, with his work there at Florida and at Ohio State, I mean, always at a high level, always at high octane there. I mean, you had to hand it to him. 9th in career value there. Let's see, 8th in best 5 consecutive seasons, 4th in B5, best 5 seasons overall. I mean, just consistent excellence. But in many ways, he's consumed himself. The stresses, the intensity that made him a great coach also undermined his health. And it just it'll be interesting to see if he ever gets back and where does he go. I mean, because he's kind of picky about what he wants. I mean, there was always this theory he always wanted to coach at Notre Dame, but right now it doesn't seem that way. And who knows, maybe with his health issues, he may never get back into the arena again. It's kind of like our Prestige, and he was crushed by the pressures of it all. And there were always rumors he'd get back, but no, he never did. He just made his work he stayed an announcer and all that.
It's not an easy job. I'm sure it's high stress, especially the recruiting season. That's probably the most stressful, maybe even more so than in season, because it's high pressure to get those high 5-star athletes coming to your school. And, you don't have a lot to persuade them other than tradition and facilities. So it's challenging. And
now to Bear Bryant. I mean, in my chapter on him, I interviewed 2 players. Leroy Jordan, Dallas Cowboy great Leroy Jordan, who was part of his 1961 national championship team, his very first. And Jeff Rutledge, who was like the backup quarterback for the Giants and the Redskins in the 80s and all that, who was part of his national championship teams in 78 and 79. Oh, they gave both of those men, may God bless their souls. I mean, they gave me wonderful chapter and verse on the late Bear Bryant. And Bear Bryant, I mean, before Nick Saban came along, he was it. I mean, he was the man. Only recently did Urban Meyer and Nick Saban surpass him. I mean, had this book come out in 2018, Bear Bryant would have been numero uno. But as it turned out, they're just recently, Saban and Meyer surpassed him. But Bear Bryant, he was a product of his time. I don't think he could coach today, given his intensity. I mean, that famous thing at Junction, those kids in metal Quonset huts, no water and all that. Oh, there with ESPN and all that. Oh, someone would have filed a lawsuit and all that. You could not do that today. I mean, he probably would have been crucified in the press. But back then you could do that sort of thing and all that. But he was such a momentous figure. I mean, even when I went to Tuscaloosa, I think it was at 2014, I was doing research at their archives there, copying, taking notes, looking at photographs, copying data and all that. Just to look at his photo, he was such an intimidating presence, those eyes. I mean, he was a genuinely big man. And he had those eyes. I mean, I had to cast my eyes down. I mean, I can't imagine meeting him in person. He must have been such a powerful presence. And I read stories about it. when you went into his office, he had a couch that sagged extremely. So you were one of his players. You sat in that thing, you shrank even further. So that made him even bigger. I mean, it was part of the intimidation factor. And then he sat in that famous cast iron tower there. And there's actually in the archives there's a painting of him sitting in a cast iron tower. It was from a Sports Illustrated photograph. Someone took a photograph, and there he was, the lord of his domain, looking from that tower there. And as the story goes, if he ever saw anything that displeased him, they had a chain gate to it. When you heard the rattle of that chain, everyone froze in position, and if he went down there, he wouldn't say a word. He would just point this accusing finger at you and call out a person's uniform number. And oh, woe be to that player, because you screwed up. To make him come down from that tower, you really had to screw up bad. And oh, you were going to be punished for it, my friend. Yes, you were going to be punished. And I remember reading in that book by Keith Donovan, a very good book called The Missing Ring, about the 66 season where Alabama had a perfect record, but they didn't win the national championship. They finished third behind Notre Dame and Michigan State. I remember there was this beautiful anecdote. His gym classes or his training camps were so rigorous. This Marine who was about to go to Paris Island, he wanted to prep up for it. And then he went to Paris Island. He wrote to his teammates saying, actually, Marine boot camp at Paris Island is paradise compared to Bear Bryant's training camps. Oh, this is in 66 during Vietnam. Oh my God. Better him than me, man. Better him than me.
Right. It's amazing how many different styles of coaches there's different styles that are successful. They can be polar opposites. Bear Bryant was definitely the master of the domain and the authority there, but you have other coaches that have great success that are players coaches, and players just love to be around them and play hard for them. So it's amazing how the different strategies both work,
And yet, despite the severity that he put his players through, the love and reference I got for Bear Bryant from Leroy Jordan and Jeff Rutledge, I mean, there was love. That as the son loves the father, they loved him, and those two guys spoke for all other Alabama Crimson Tide players who played there during Bear Bryant's reign there. It was just. You could feel it there. I mean, they swore by the man, and he was everything to him. I mean, he was a father figure, especially those who came from broken, like Ken Stabler. He came from a broken home. I mean, his father was a nut job, and I mean, Stabler was a rebel himself. I mean, there were conflicts between him and Bear Bryant, but at the end, I remember one time Stabler told Time Magazine, he said, if I ever got a call in the middle of the night from Coach Bryant, said, Kenny, I need your help. He said, I'm on the first flight out to Birmingham, Alabama, to Alabama. And he meant it too. And that's the thing about Snake. I mean, he led that team. I mean, there's great quarterbacks, Joe Namath, Ken Stabler. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there were stupendous teams. And I think even more amazingly is that in the early 60s, from 61 to 66, this is during the civil rights era where all of Alabama was in a state of constant turmoil. And yet they played some of the greatest football in the history of the program there. And they were able to rise above those racial tensions. I mean, you got Governor Wallace standing in the doorway there in 63, the hoses in Birmingham there, the bombings there and all that. And yet they were playing stupendous football. And it's just absolutely amazing how they were able to rise above it.
Yeah, that's definitely, a very hot spot. And for him to be able to keep a team focused and play such good ball, that's quite a testament to the coach he was. Yeah, that's definitely. Now some of the other coaches, just like your NFL book that we discussed, I love how you have the coaches of different eras that are mixed in here, and fairly so. You already talked about Walter Camp, but you have guys like Fielding Yost are up in that top, and Rockney we talked about earlier. and some of these Pop Warners on that list, just some of these great early coaches too, Wallace Wades of the world. Those guys are, you give them a great fair shake with your formula to put them in there for the recognition that they deserve.
With Hurry Up Yost, Fielding Hurry Up Yost, I stated in my book when he retired in 1926 after as head coach of Michigan. He was, according to my calculations, the greatest college football coach of all time, and remained so until Bud Wilkinson and Bear Bryant came along. Yost literally put the Michigan Wolverines on the college football map. Before he came in 1901, Michigan, they had a football program, but they were nothing. They were not even a power. There were a lot of loose bricks without mortar. And when he came there, he converted them into a powerhouse. In his first 5 seasons, they annihilated all competition. They were the power in what is now the Big Ten. Back then, it was simply called the Western Conference. But back then, they were called the point-a-minute teams because they were winning games like 128-0 and literally averaging a point a minute. They played in the very first Rose Bowl game in 1902 against Stanford and beat Stanford 49-0. It was just, they ran at a break. Literally, it's what we call hurry up offense. And there was pre-forward pass era. There was no passing back then. The forward pass was not legalized until 1906 or 07. So it was strictly a running game. And back then, to get a first down, you had to get 5 yards and 3 tries to get a first down. So it was strictly a ground game. And yet, his men would run off plays at a breakneck pace. As soon as the ball was whistled dead, the Michigan quarterback would start barking out the signals, and the men would quickly pick themselves off, set themselves in formation, and they would run the play off, and it was just so relentless. They would go through teams like a knife through warm butter. And they just, for 5 straight years, they were unbeaten. They only had one tie, I think it was like 0-3 against Minnesota, but they had a perfect record. And then finally in 1905, last game of the season, they lost to the University of Chicago, coached by Amos Alonzo Stagg, 2-0. It's one of the most immortal matchups in college football history. It finally ended their unbeaten streak. It was the end of an era for the point-a-minute teams. But Yost dominated Michigan football, and then in the early 1920s, he came back this time with one of the great passing combos in college football history: Benny Friedman to Benny Oosterban. Benny Friedman was, he was a great quarterback. Back then, throwing a pass was a risky business. If you threw an incompletion in the end zone, it was ruled a touchback. Literally, instead of, getting another down, no, it was ruled a touchback. The other team got the ball. You were taking, and back then the football was a lot fatter. It wasn't really conducive for holding as a pass. It was more conducive for running and drop kicking. But Friedman to Oosterban was the greatest passing tandem in the 1920s there. And later, Benny Friedman went to the NFL and became an early football hero and was one of the great passers in the NFL there, late Benny Friedman. And finally, ultimately got elected to Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Benny Oosterban was a pretty decent coach, too. He led Michigan to the national championship in 1948 there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We had some great segments. I'm not sure if you're familiar with John Behe has wrote 2 books on Fielding Yost, and we had a great opportunity to talk to him a few months back. We had like 3 or 4 episodes with him on Fielding Yost, and just some of the great things. I guess maybe what I was talking about earlier with being a player's coach. With the training tables and some of the great things he did for his players, and and taught them the game and made them intelligent in the game so that they could react on the fly without having a coach. Because most of his career, it was illegal for a coach to coach from the sideline, which sounds foreign to us. But just a very interesting coach, and I'm glad to see him up there high on your list.
Here's another thing about Fielding Hurry Up Yost. His concept of a punt and a pass and a prayer was so influential to college football coaches in the early 20th century. General Bob Nealon took many of his 7 football maxims from Hurry Up Yost's concepts. Charlie Moran, who led center and Texas A&M, he was very influenced by fielding hurry up Yost. Bud Wilkinson, who influenced like Darrell Roy on them, they was influenced by fielding hurry up Yost. That idea of utilizing having a good punter and a field goal kicker, deferring, let the other team get the ball first, let them make the first mistake, and then you capitalize on the mistake. I mean, that's classic hurry up Yost there. I mean, up to even the 1960s, his influences were being expressed by college football coaches there. And it just, I mean, he had such an enormous impact there. I mean, Dana X Bible, who really helped revive Texas college football there, both at the University of Texas and at Texas A&M, was deeply influenced by hurry up Yost. Had such enormous impact, just like Rockne. Just as Rockne had maximum impact, so did Yost, especially in terms of defense.
Oh, okay. Now, you talked about one of Yost's opposing coaches, Amos Alonzo Stagg. Now, he's one that I don't see on the list, but I'm sure because of his long tenure and having some poor seasons, is that maybe some of the reasons why he didn't make the cut on that?
Yes, unfortunately. The fact now he was, I believe, according to my calculations, he was one of the top 3 coaches of the 1890s, and also I think he was in the top 3 in the 1900s. The problem with Stagg was his enormous longevity. Chicago was always, like, during the 1900s, they were second fiddle to Michigan there. He was always the second best team after hurry up Yost. It wasn't until 2005 they finally knocked him off. Also, he never really had 5 straight seasons where he just, like, unlike Yost or Saban or Bear Bryant, an absolute total domination. I mean, he won some mythical national championships, but they were so spaced apart. And another big factor was after 1924, he was informed by the president of the University of Chicago that football is going to be de-emphasized. And that meant he really couldn't get top-notch talent anymore. And any other coach today, they probably would have quit and discussed, I'm leaving right here. But no, Yost stayed on until he reached the age of 70, and he, quote unquote, retired in 1932. But his teams just went down the hill, and that really dragged him down enormously. I mean, if he had just quit right then and there, I think he would have had a shot at the top 50. And then he also coached at the College of the Pacific. And again, it was just, his record wasn't really that good, and it dragged him down. It really dragged him down. So that's why, I mean, it's a shame. I mean, he was so innovative. He invented so many things. I mean, so many inventions and all that. Man in motion. I don't know if he invented the huddle, but various other things and all that. I mean, he was right there at the creation, shifting, backfield shifting, and all that. Man in motion, and the tackling dummy. I think he created the tackling dummy, and things that we take for granted. I mean, but he created those things. But no, it's such a shame. I know a friend of mine, my college football group, college football appreciator, I think is Sumner. He wrote a splendid biography. I think his name is Charles Sumner, but it's up on Amazon. So those you listeners, you want a good bio on Amos Alonzo Stagg, buy that book. By his last name is Sumner, Charles Sumner, I think it is. Buy it. It's a top-notch book. I do endorse it.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Now, that's just but your list, I mean, it's a great explanation of why Stagg isn't on there. A great explanation, why Folsom is, and some of the other ones are so high. Just a brilliant list, and it's a great place to go here to reference to see where these coaches stack up over almost 150 years of football here. So it's just a tremendous job, and my hat's off to you, because it's quite an accomplishment. And is the book still available for purchase? And if so, where can people get it?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is up. You can only buy it online at Amazon. It is up on Amazon. It's always going to be up. It's not available in stores. You must buy it online at Amazon right now. It is on sale at 30% off, and will remain on sale until after the national championship game is played in January. So if you're looking for a stocking stuffer for Christmas, go get it. It's on sale at 30% off. You can just buy it at Amazon there.
Okay. And that you segued right into the next thing I was going to talk about. Matthew's going to be helping us. The whole month of December, we're going to be talking about the Rose Bowl. It's the 100th anniversary of the stadium, the Rose Bowl, and we're going to be having a lot of guests and historians on the whole month of December. And Matthew is kindly enough to join us. He's going to be joining us for more than a few of these great Rose Bowl episodes, so we can look forward to hearing more from Matthew here in the coming month. Matthew, do you have any last words on some of these great coaches before we sign off here?
Yeah, you were talking about surprises. Here's a big surprise. Tom Osborne of Nebraska. I knew Osborne was going to be in the top 50, but what shocked me was how high up he is. I mean, right now, I got him at number 4, but when I was doing my calculations before Nick Saban and Urban Meyer surpassed Bear Bryant, I actually had Tom Osborne second behind Bear Bryant. I mean, when you look at his 25 seasons of coaching, absolute consistency. I mean, actually, if he lost that 1984 Orange Bowl game against Miami, one of the greatest college bowl games in all of college football history, according to my calculations. And he also lost the national championship game to Florida State in 93. If he had won either one of those games, guess what? He would have ranked number 1. According to my rating system. I mean, that surprised the heck out of me, because sometimes when I was doing my research for the book, I would do what if scenarios. What happens if this coach had won this thing here? How would it have changed him? And it's like, whoa. I mean, my mind was blown. I mean, people don't realize that, but yeah, that's how great a coach he was. And also, I had the privilege of interviewing Tom Osborne. He was literally my second interview for the book. My very first interview was the late Vince Dooley, who we just lost a few days ago. May God rest his soul. Osborne was glorious and magnificent with me. Kind of Gary Cooperish, Midwest taciturn, but when he said something, every word he said was good as gold. I mean, quick and to the point, no nonsense. He cut right straight to the thing. I remember we talked about his decision to go for the 2-point conversion in that Orange Bowl game. He could have played for the tie, done like Para Parseghian did in '66, played for the tie and guarantee the national championship. He said no. He said he had always talked to himself that he came to a situation like that. No, he would always go for the win. He said, and I myself would never vote for a coach who played for a tie and backed into it by a tie like that. He said, I wouldn't have voted for a coach like that, and I didn't want to do it like that. And he said, that's why I went for the 2-point conversion there. And I remember at the time watching the game, I applauded his courage and all of that. I mean, if it hadn't tipped off that one guy's hands, he would have made it too. But Osborne, that blew me away how great his teams were. I mean, right now, let's see. I had Osborne 6th in terms of career value, 11th in average season rating, but 2nd in terms of best 5 consecutive seasons. I mean, only Nick Saban surpassed him and 7th in terms of his B5 value. I mean, but that surprised me how high up he was. I thought, whoa, that was a big surprise, the biggest surprise when I was doing my calculations. But a truly great coach and a great man.
Okay, well, you brought up a question. Definitely Osborne's a great feature too, but the book you're saying, it's 30% off till the bowl season. Now, with it being on Amazon, does the book get revised? So if somebody bought the book today and bought it in February, it may be different because the rankings changed. Is that what you're saying?
No, that would involve too much work, alterations of the manuscript. No, it is as it was when it came out in 2019. I'm not doing updates or anything.
Okay,
like
so
that.
the updates you see on your Facebook page on the college history and literature page.
If you want to know the updated ratings, you just join the college football history and literature appreciation page. And every late January, early February, you'll see my updated calculations there. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Matthew DiBiase, in his great book, Lords of the Gridiron, College Football's Greatest Coaches. Also, don't forget about the Lords of Gridiron 2. And, he's got some other great books too. Maybe you want to mention those before we let you go here.
Yeah, it's my first book, Bench Bosses, the NHL's Coaching Elite, which came out in 2015. It's up on Amazon. It's up on Amazon there. And also my second book, The Art of the Dealers, the NHL's Greatest General Managers, is also up on Amazon. And right now it's on sale at 30% off and will remain on sale for the entire duration of the present NHL season. It won't, get it while you can. It's an innovative book, and it's along other books. It sells, especially in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Matthew, thank you very much. And we'll talk to you in a few weeks here when we get into the Rose Bowl segment. So thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Darren. Thank you, and God bless you.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.